What is up, guys? Welcome to an updated version of every Arrowverse main villain's first appearances, ranked from worst to best, this time with the main villains from Arrow Season 7, The Flash Season 5, Supergirl Season 4, and Legends of Tomorrow Season 4. All of those main villains' first appearances put into the list. The reason this time I have my commentary in this video is because the last time I did this, the video was copyrighted, and I do want to avoid that. The way this will work is I will take every single first appearance of every main villain in the Arrowverse, and when I say main villain, I mean the villain who is the villain at the end, not necessarily who the main villain is before, like a villain swap if there is one. And for the first appearances, I'm not counting any flashbacks or visions or even vibes, or also a scene where the main villain technically debuts but you can't really see them, or you only see like a part of them, or you can't see them at all but they're technically there. Those scenes do not count either. And if a main villain appears before the season that they are the main villain of debuts or starts, that scene or that whole storyline, like for Vandal Savage, will not count for that first appearance. So with that in mind, let's start the list with number 20.
You owe Alora nothing, certainly not a daughter's life.
Aura is not her mother. She can be made to see reason.
I sometimes wonder if any of the women in your family can.
You forget yourself, Lieutenant. I am your general.
I have sworn my allegiance to you in every way possible. I obey your orders and your heart. If you cannot bring yourself to kill her, there is no shame, and I do not judge. But let me end her and be done with it.
Do not question my resolve, Non.
Non's first appearance was very indicative of the character that we would see, a very boring character that just comes out of nowhere, especially being the main villain of the season. He just comes out of nowhere, and I don't think this first appearance did a good job at actually just introducing him as a character, and I think that's just because he wasn't intended to be the main villain. He was just intended to be a sidekick to Astra, and you can clearly see that in this scene, as well as the rest of the season, until out of nowhere, he becomes the main villain.
I feel different.
Yes, there's something about this place.
Your Highness, we've reached our coordinates.
Finally.
We've arrived.
Just like Non, Rhea's first appearance is very indicative of the character as well, in the same exact way, a very boring character who comes out of absolutely nowhere as the main villain of the season and has basically no connection to the actual season outside of one character who is just really a love interest this season. And I don't think this first appearance, just like Non, did a good job at establishing this character as a character at all, or a threat, or the main villain of the season at all.
I wouldn't want to mess with you. I'm just playing with you. Till we get our FDA approval, we gotta be careful with the rollout. You understand?
I get it. Just trying to make it through a day.
Aren't we all? Hug him up.
Sure thing, Mr. Diaz.
Diaz's debut on the show has got to be the most disappointing main villain debut ever, and one of the most disappointing main villains ever as well. A character who was set to be the main villain of the season before the season began, but that actually didn't turn out to be the main villain until like 2/3 into the season, which was for me a very big point of disappointment. But also his first appearance was just so disappointing. He was just a drug dealer, a low-level drug dealer who had a conversation with Diggle and just gave him some drugs. It was obviously a big part of the season and their storylines, but just such a boring first appearance, and the rest of the episode didn't really go that well for him either.
Yeah. The Kopay escaped. Here's what I want you to do. Track him down and recapture him, or else. There's been a setback, but we'll make it right.
Oh, you'd better.
Now, I gotta say, this first appearance was definitely not bad. There's nothing really inherently wrong with the way it was set up, and I like the fact that it was in the mid-season finale. I think that's a great way to either introduce a main villain or have a big showdown between the main villain and the main hero. But the reason this is so late, early in the list, is because I don't like Neuron's design. I think that I get that it's trying to be off-putting, and it definitely is, but it just reminds me way too much of the nameless monster goons from Suicide Squad that I just can't take Neuron seriously at all based off this one scene, which is why he is so low on the list, despite the fact that the scene and the placement of the scene in the season and the build-up of the character to this episode is actually not half bad. Just like Neuron, Vandal Savage's debut was technically not a bad one on paper, but the reason it falls so flat is very similar to Neuron. I just can't take this character seriously for the life of me. For Neuron, it was because of his design, but for Vandal Savage, it's because of his accent, which is so different from any version of Vandal Savage I've ever heard, which makes it not really sound like Vandal Savage, but also it's not an accent that in these moments, for some reason, it just takes me out of it so much, and I cannot take it seriously. It's not the fault of the actor, it's not the fault of the people behind the show, but that's just what comes out, and which is why this scene just falls so flat as a first appearance for this character in this season.
Oh, keep your seats.
Excuse me, this is a private meeting.
Oh, excellent. I despise interruptions. Who the hell are you? Me? I'm the man you're looking for. I'm the one who controls, or what do you people call them? The ghosts? So you're all fretting about this city dying. I'm here on behalf of an organization that wants you to let it die. See, death is a beautiful thing. We die, we go into the ground, our remains grow into flowers. It's only in the interval after dying that new things can sprout.
That's enough.
So I actually do think that the Arrowverse does actually have some pretty great first appearances for their main villains, and because of that, basically every single character from now on is actually, or does actually have a pretty great first appearance. So here we have Damien Darhk, who appears in this one scene, in a very menacing scene where he does feel very menacing, and he explains his motivation of how he wants Star City to die, and I think that it does a good job at that. It is a little boring of a setting for a main villain to appear, and it's not exactly a huge debut for him, but it did definitely do what it was trying to do, and because of that, I think that it is actually a pretty good first appearance.
Okay? Is that the Green Arrow? I don't know who the hell that is.
This scene takes place way before we knew that Emiko was going to be the main villain of the season, actually 16 episodes before, and I think that if you look back on the season, they did a good job of introducing this character and building her up from a masked vigilante to the sister, or the half-sister of Oliver Queen, to the head of the Ninth Circle with twist after twist, which, I mean, most of them we saw coming, but still, I think this is a pretty good first appearance for the character based on all of that. She's not exactly a villain in this scene, or a lot of this season, but she is in the background, and that is definitely a good thing, or that is definitely a good first appearance for the character.
Top none is winged.
I don't think the scene would have worked nearly as well if the season didn't very well build up the transformation between Samantha Arias and Rain, and I do think it actually did a good job at setting that up to the point where when this scene happened, it was a scene that, again, they built up very well, and it was a great ending to this episode, and a great first appearance for this character.
Something going again. Yeah, I know, but this time... I'm gonna have to
call you back. What? Will you come back for another pound of flesh? You're gonna be disappointed, pal. Thanks to you.
This was definitely a great first appearance for Malcolm Merlyn, aka the Dark Archer, where we see him killing a character that Oliver went after, I think in the first episode of the show, so you have that parallel with Malcolm. It was a great way to show his similarities to Oliver as well as his differences and his threat towards the main hero of the show, so definitely a great first appearance for this main villain.
The execution methodical, like ours.
Well, it worked. The Flash is back in Central City.
It appears things are going as planned.
As if there were any doubt. What's our next step?
I'm thinking.
I'm not gonna lie, when this scene happened, I actually got pretty excited and pretty hyped for this character when he said, "I'm thinking," and also right before that it was revealed that everything that happened in the episode was planned by him. I think that that was just such a great reveal and such a great moment for the villain. It's also a very good looking scene. I love the blue in this room, and I think that it works in subsequent episodes as well whenever the Flash is in that room, that it just looks so good, and I think the line, "I'm thinking," is a great way to end the episode and a great way to introduce this villain.
Who are you? Savitar, the god of speed.
Savitar's first appearance was a pretty good appearance for the character, where it showed his design, which we've never really seen before, and I think that based off the first appearance, I thought it looked really good, and I still think it looks really good to this day, and it also shows how Barry's the only person who can see him, and the best thing about it is it shows how much more powerful and how much larger Savitar is than Barry, or than the Flash, showing how much more powerful he is, and I think that is a great way to introduce a character who is supposed to be a much more powerful version of our character in a literal sense for Savitar.
You see, my partner wants to move on to other things.
But your partner isn't here, is he?
According to who? Hello, Via Bard.
Mr. Dark.
So this first appearance was actually changed from the last two versions because I noticed that Reverse Flash was kind of the main villain of the season, not really the Legion of Doom, and even if it is the Legion of Doom, there is Damien Dark here as well, so Reverse Flash and Damien Dark come together, that is enough for a team already, so I will say that this is the first appearance, and it is a way better first appearance for the main villains than when in the mid-season finale when Reverse Flash, Damien Dark, and Malcolm Merlyn came together for the first time. Reverse Flash's debut in this episode is awesome. I don't think they announced that he was going to show up, so it was a very unexpected scene that I definitely did not see coming. It was pretty awesome to see as well, and the ending of the episode when he says Thawne, and then Reverse Flash answers Mr. Dark, it's a great way to end the episode, and it's a great way to introduce Reverse Flash and the Legion of Doom.
Al-Sahir will face the League's justice, but for his crimes against our code.
But Sarah
was never truly one of us. What of Queen?
he has sworn to protect Merlyn at any cost.
If that is true, then Oliver Queen courts war with us.
Ra's al Ghul definitely had a way better start than how he ended up, and I think this first appearance definitely shows that. I love how they have all these people addressing him, and they don't show his face until right at the end, showing how powerful he is and showing how all these people will do anything for him, really. I don't know, I think this scene definitely does convey that, and then the scene, when he says at the end, Oliver Queen courts war with us, I think that's a great line, and again, an incredible way to introduce this villain, who did not exactly turn out to be a great villain in the end. I think this was an awesome fight scene that really looked great, like the colors and everything that came together looked great, but the best thing about this first appearance for what I call Cicada version 2 is how much better she was already than her predecessor, which is her uncle/father, just in the fight scene and how menacing she is compared to him. It's very clear that she's a much better fighter, and we see that in this scene, and I just think that it's a great villain swap because, first of all, she was set up the entirety of the season because she was connected to when Cicada got his powers, and we even saw her in the past, but again, I do not include visions or even dreams or things like that, so this is technically her first appearance, and it was a great way to set her up as a better version of a villain that was getting tiresome in this season, which was Cicada, but here we have Cicada version 2.
At least he's a good man.
He is not a man! I was the man of tomorrow, not him! Not him!
So it's all ego then?
No, it's science. I want to see if the Kryptonian pretender can bleed. Even gods can die. You'll see. Everyone will see.
So I know I said I'm not including any flashbacks, but I was more talking about Slade Wilson, and I'll get to him in a second because he did debut before the actual season started with all the flashbacks and even during the season. But for Lex Luthor, I think it's different because this was the first appearance we saw in the same episode that he debuted, and if I were to include his actual first appearance where he's just lying there saying that he misses his sister and he is going to die, where it seems like he's going to die, that's a terrible first appearance for the character, or at least it's not a good first appearance in its look, so I included this one instead, kind of going over the rule that I said earlier in the video. Still, it doesn't matter. I think this is an awesome first appearance for Lex Luthor. It shows his motivation in a great way. It shows a very comic book accurate motivation as well. It shows his hatred for Superman, and it shows the great acting from John Cryer as Lex Luthor, and even though this is a flashback, I think it was too good of a first appearance to not include on the list.
How you doing? Help you with something?
Green Arrow? No, I'm not Green Arrow.
Right off the bat, Prometheus had such a great debut in this season. The episode he debuted on was such a huge improvement over the season that had followed, but this debut of the main villain was definitely one of those moments in this episode that showed how much better it is now in Season 5. Prometheus had a great debut where he has a lot more mystery to him than the last slot on the list, whereas Lex Luthor, they explained everything about him and they showed the actor. Here, it's very mysterious, everything about him, which is two different ways to introduce a character, but considering this is episode 1, that's episode 15, it makes a lot of sense that is how they went about it. So for Prometheus, I think this is a great introduction for the character in a pretty awesome moment and a great ending to this episode.
It was you. You were the one in my house that night. You killed my mother. Why?
If you want to know that, you're gonna have to catch me.
This moment was definitely an awesome introduction for Reverse Flash. I think the moment where the lightning strikes and we don't actually see the lightning, but then Barry looks up and he sees something, and then the camera shows a yellow man that runs down in super speed. It's just such an awesome, intense moment, and the first confrontation between Barry and Reverse Flash, or the Flash versus Reverse Flash, in this moment, as well as the fight scene, the subsequent fight scene that I did not show. It's just such an awesome introduction for a pretty awesome villain in the end.
You can't help her, Ray. Oh my God.
I am so much more than a god.
I love how they built up this character in the season, as well as I love how they built up this moment in the episode. I think that the way they built it up was just so good, and his final introduction in the episode did not disappoint. After 17 episodes of building up to him, or really like 12 episodes to be building up to him, when they finally got to his first appearance, it did not disappoint. He has an awesome design, and considering they have such a small CGI budget, it makes sense that he only really appeared in one episode plus this scene, and the scenes we got, I think, were enough. And this scene with Malice as his introduction was an awesome introduction to the character, to this CGI character that definitely looks really, really good. So, like I said, this is definitely not Slade's first appearance in the show. He appeared a lot in the flashbacks of Season 1, and he did appear a lot in the flashbacks of Season 2 as well, as he was the main villain of that as well. But I think that, considering this is the first appearance of the present day, where he was the main villain of the season, that definitely is considered his first appearance, and it's a great, great first appearance where they show his monologue, which I think it's an awesome scene, minus the part where he says something about Oliver's love and it shows Felicity. I don't like that part, but that's not Slade's fault. That's just the editing of the episode. But for Deathstroke, an awesome monologue, and just an insanely good introduction to, or reintroduction to, this character in the present day as the main villain.
Never forget, I am the fastest man alive.
He's killing him.
You're next.
This scene is just so incredibly intense, especially for the first appearance of a main villain ever. I gotta say, it did kind of go downhill from Zoom. Not in a bad way. It's just this scene was just such a great introduction that they never really reached the peak that they had in this scene. I think the only scene in the Arrowverse that rivals the intensity of this one is the scene in Arrow Season 5, Episode 17, where Oliver says, "I wanted to and I liked it." Those two scenes have got to be the most intense scenes in the Arrowverse ever, and that cannot be understated, which is why Zoom, who is the scariest villain in the Arrowverse ever, had the greatest debut for a main villain to date, and he has yet to be topped, and I doubt he ever will be. So anyway, I know this video is getting very long, so if you made it this far, thanks so much for watching, and let me know your list in the comments down below, as well as what you think about my list in the comments down below. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.